Just a quick note for today's special podcast. And I know I have done two bits while I was editing this episode, but the other one in the outro is going to come up at the very end very soon. But I thought I would do this intro to begin with because I'm not going to lie to you, there were some few difficulties whilst editing the episode. And a lot of the problem with it was due to Zoom. And the Zoom was being a little bit of a pain because I use it usually just to create my podcasts and to record them as well. But I think it was because of my Bluetooth earphones that I am wearing that there have been some times where the episode was very jumpy. I've done my best to fix the audio because I know that a lot of people will be very sensitive about the crackling for Zoom, and there might be words that people might not get. So I have done my very best to sort it out, but obviously there are still going to be some bits in there, and if you do hear some bits, I really do apologize for that. But yeah, that's all I can really say, really. So until then, I'm going to leave you to it to watch the episode, and then yeah, hopefully to catch up very soon.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this very special episode of the Social Wave Project. My name is Sarah Francis, but everyone calls me Sez, and usually I would up new episodes once a month of interviewing guests about the things that they are very passionate about and just talking about things that they want to raise awareness about as well. But today we are going to dive into another special episode because we have one guest who has wanted to talk about the things that has been very important to him, and we have done an interview earlier in the year, so we thought we would do another interview again. So this is going to be a massive opportunity because today I'm going to be interviewing my friend, the amazing Connor Wood, who is with me now. Connor, hello.
Hello, I come to you slightly ill, me, but I shall soldier on through. I have a headache and a slightly blocked nose, but it's all good.
I know that you have introduced yourself like a plenty of times, Connor, but for those who don't know, what do you do?
That's the question. No, I'm predominantly autistic consultant working on a variety of products, services, and with companies to ensure that their consumer-facing stuff is as autism-friendly as possible. And yeah, I also do that YouTube thing occasionally.
Well, because I know you said you didn't want to do YouTube anymore, and then you just started back on YouTube for about like a month ago now, and it was actually quite surprising that you wanted to start again. But everyone can personally understand, really, because you had a lot to say, which we'll get into just in a little bit of a minute. But today, in the special episode, me and Connor are going to be talking about diagnosis, employment, and social media, all of which that Connor is very passionate about because he has been through all three of these experiences. So jumping in to the first question, growing up, did you ever feel different compared to your family and friends?
Yes, I did feel different, but first of all, in the way of, I think we all probably feel different to each other. Otherwise, that would be really boring. But I didn't feel like I was the odd one out. In my head, it was simply, I'm surrounded by weirdos. Everyone's really, too spontaneous and too, like, they keep lying about the most minuscule things and not even realizing that they're doing it. And just, so I didn't see it as like, oh, I'm different to everyone else. I saw it as like, everyone else is just so bizarre. Yeah, until I got to about the age of 15, to which I realized, oh no, I think it's me, because of course that's when you've got hormones surging through your bodies, and it means that emotional complexities develop. There's far more emotional concepts to be aware of and to have to think about, and 15-year-old Connor couldn't really comprehend that for the latter years of my teenage years. So yes, I did then. And then obviously at the age of 18, was when I felt the most different, because that's when I went, okay, yeah, I do want to pursue a diagnosis.
And then how long did it take for you to get a diagnosis?
So I started my diagnosis by going to my GP in April of 2016, and I'm aware that I'm extremely lucky in this, like extremely, because it can go on for years for some people, but mine, all in all, I had an appointment in July, and that was with kind of I think it was a trainee psychiatrist, to which she, like, but it was a really long appointment, that one was. I think it was about an hour and a half, maybe even closer to 2 hours, where I brought my mum in and we just spoke about absolutely everything in my life that, like, could be written down to like an autistic experience as such. I then had to go away and do some like tick box quotients. I'm sure anyone who's done diagnosis has encountered any form of them. Sent that back in, and then 2 months later, in September the 12th, 2016, I had my appointment with the main psychiatrist. This one was only about 20 minutes, and all it really was me walking in and him going, yeah, I've looked over all the stuff, you're autistic. And to which I was like, yeah. So I'd got the scores back for these quotients and stuff. I got 46 out of 50, and like anything 30 plus is indicative of being autistic. So yeah, got nearly full marks on that one, so no arguing as such. It was relatively short though, and I'm very lucky for that. It then took about another month for me to actually receive the actual diagnosis letter. So like from September 12th, it was really weird. It was like, I have this diagnosis, can't use it yet. But yeah,
I never heard of something like this, but it's quite different really, because compared to you, really, I had an early diagnosis, which I probably won't remember, but most people who are diagnosed as autistic, it tends to happen a bit later compared to early, but it's just something that everyone could know.
no, majority of diagnoses are early, hence why it's called a late diagnosis. No, majority of it is picked up as when you're a kid. The only reason why in our world why you may think that is just because you hear adults getting diagnosed and stuff. You don't hear of the for every one autistic adult that talks about being diagnosed, you don't hear of the 50 kids that happen that same week.
But that's really interesting now. And then jumping on from that, since being diagnosed as autistic, have you ever felt that compared to before, have you thought that your life would have been different?
Yes, massively. Had I not, well, first of all, I wouldn't have a job if I wouldn't have this career path if I didn't get that diagnosis. But no, that's obviously not what I mean. On a personal level, I needed that diagnosis for multiple things. I needed it for education in some ways because I'd left my sixth form due to reasons which can mostly actually now on reflection be put down to being autistic. Should I want to go back into education? I realized that kind of the more adult structure of education wasn't working for me. So I needed that diagnosis for then, to which it then came into effect when I started doing the Open University and in-person tutorials. I really needed that then. I also needed it for employment. I didn't feel that reasonable adjustments were being made when I needed them. And like, reasonable adjustments is a term that can be far too easily dismissed now. Like, if you break it down, reasonable adjustments, not asking for the world, just asking for a few little things to help make a massive difference. So yeah, in that area too. But on a social level, I wanted it, first of all, to just prove to myself that I was like, okay, things are this way for a reason, and that's okay. Just different. There's nothing wrong with you, just something different about you. And that's absolutely fine. But also on a social level, to justify it to, well, it's weird because I would say it was more to justify it to the more challenging people in my life, let's say, because anyone who was my friend, well, at the time I did need it for social reasons to make up for what happened as a teenager as such. But like in my adult life, I feel everybody in my life, would be friends with me regardless of my diagnosis. So like it doesn't really make a difference on that level. But to some people need reasons for why things happen. They can't just accept the fact that people are different. So it was useful in that respect.
It's kind of like funny, really, when you think about it, because there are people who are going to be there for you and they'll be like, oh, Connor's just the same. Even though he's autistic, it doesn't really make a difference at all. And those are the people that would actually like stick to you, because in the community, in the YouTube community, because all of us in the YouTube community are autistic. So we've got you, Dan, me, Holly, and Andy, and many more people. It feels like even though we're in the same boat, it doesn't really make any difference, really, to be honest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but in all fairness, none of us would be connected without that, without being autistic. But the way I see it, I don't want people to define me by it.
But then moving on from that, with employment, you've been on a very long journey with that. So what was employment like for you? Because I know you discussed it on your YouTube channel, but in like a sense, really, you started employment working for other people in the company rather than taking on self-employment.
Probably the best starting point, actually, is to go back to when I was a teenager pre-diagnosis. At the age of 16, over that summer holidays between years 11 and 12, or college or apprenticeship, whatever you go to do, there's kind of an unspoken rule that that's when you go and get your first job. Whether it's literally just working at McDonald's or whatever, that's when you go and you over that 12-week holiday, you go and make some money in that. I had so much anxiety in year 11 leading up to that end point around that. So obviously there was the social anxiety of the whole talking to strangers as well. I need to point, there's a very big difference between talking to strangers and talking at strangers. And at strangers is what I do for the majority of the time now. But yeah, back then, this fear of having to talk to strangers. Also, I'm very fussy material and clothes wise. I don't like to see logos on me. If a logo's on me, it has to not to look like too much of a logo, and it has to mean something to me, and it's in my control as to whether that's too deep. I get funny about stuff, and on a sensory level, if there is a logo stitch on something, I can feel the threads underneath and just which is why most of the time I dress quite plain, because then I don't have to think about anything like that. Like I do, not to go too down the clothes route, but like I do wear different stuff. It's got to be my choice, and there's got to be a reason for it. But yeah, anyway, so actual fear of uniform, which is one of the weirdest ones to say. But yeah, no, it's true. That was one of my biggest anxieties around that. And I didn't get some job at McDonald's over that summer. The most amount of work I did some car washing. I think I earned about 50 quid in total over 12 weeks, like nothing at all. So it's again, that might have been different had I had a diagnosis, because I feel there would be like less expectation, but I find that weird in itself that we should have different expectations. So that was kind of my first struggle as such. And that anxiety, obviously, like, it wasn't going to go away. And like as a teenager, I was working on app development. I was writing my own apps and stuff, trying to get them all big. And I like so desperately was trying to make them work. And like, you know, there were positive things that did happen with it, but ultimately it led nowhere. But I was so hopeful that that would take off for me, that I wouldn't have to think about all these anxieties surrounding going into the workplace. But yeah, alas, I didn't have an app that I could sell to a company for millions of quid. That makes it sound like out of laziness. No. I'm definitely not a lazy person at all. But yeah, so that was kind of the pre-anxiety into where, like, my first actual job as such
You said to me, and you said on your YouTube channel as well, with your first job, it was quite a bit of a struggle, really, because with your first job, you actually worked in an office job, but you left after a few days because it all got too much, and you were very overwhelmed by the surroundings, the smells, everything.
Yes, my first job after a year of leaving sixth form, I ended up getting a job at the local council building, which 6 floors, all open plan, 1,000 people on each floor, so 1,000 keyboards pressing away constantly. All I was doing was like a finance assistant. Like I was just doing some admin stuff. It was set up to be a 3-month job. I completed the task within 7 working days, and was 7 working days. And I probably would have done it in 5 had I not had to run to the loo every half an hour or whatever to just escape the noise. And like you'd come in each day and you'd be on a different desk and with no logical reasoning, and then I was put in front of this big red wall, and the color red was really overwhelming. Obviously, no, I didn't have the diagnosis at that point. It was only after that job that I pursued the diagnosis. But yeah, it was weird to me that I got asked after 7 days, because I hadn't signed the official contract. I got asked to leave, and it was like, okay, this is weird, because I've done the job that you wanted me to do to an extreme, yet I'm being punished for it, essentially. Because I thought, I'm going to work for 3 months. I'm going to build up a nice little bit of cash, a comfort cushion, to then just let me, to tick over until I can actually find something that will work for me. But no, I think I got like 400 quid in total. And because I started in January, I was like, I've told you this is my first job. How on earth have I earned enough money to assume I'm on emergency tax? But anyway, so many things I wasn't told. But yeah, I earned about 400 quid in total from what I worked out would have been, 4 grand's worth of work, which would have been a nice comfort to keep me going for, well, especially because I was living at home. I had the luxury of that, to just keep a cushion there for me to be able to find something that worked for me, because I've been told all my life, like, you've got skills, you're talented, and you're extremely clever, but I couldn't use them, and it was weird. So yeah, that happened. I left. I had 400 quid to my name. I was like, oh, cool. And then I started the diagnosis process. But in that time, I'd started a second job, and that second job was in a smaller office, but I was programming like tablets and smartphones for medical use. Funnily enough, some of the clients that we work with are all names that are starting to sound like very familiar to people, just because it's like AstraZeneca and GSK and stuff like that. Yeah, and I was there for 7 months. That was with a company though that, despite me getting my diagnosis about 5 months into it, refused to make reasonable adjustments, even though I was extremely struggling. And I won't go into this one too much, just because there's so much to say with it. But it was the way, all I wanted was to be able to do my job as efficiently as I could in as short amount of time as possible, so I didn't have to be picked up at 4 o'clock every single day by my mum, normally in tears. It was weird, and especially because I'd got that diagnosis, and I thought, oh, my diagnosis is going to solve everything for me, to then be told that like all of my problems were not to do with me being autistic, to which I'm like, yeah.
Now that's really understandable, really, because I know a few people who are like that as well. But then, since looking back for a few years, you jump into self-employment. Did it make a difference?
So with that last job, I just need to get in that I chose to leave that because it was so draining, and I didn't want to work for a company that didn't respect reasonable adjustments. Had I really wanted to, I could have got into the whole legal side of stuff, but too late. The company's been bought out by another company now as well, so I can't even do it retrospectively. But well, the kind of social media stuff that we're going to go into is what started the self-employment bit, so maybe we are better leaving that until it comes up later in the question.
Yeah, agreed. But then looking back on it, because there are figures that are going out in the moment, but I don't know if it was true or not, but originally there were only this percentage for autistic people being employed in the UK, well, in full-time employment, only 16% of adults. And I don't know about this, it got pushed up to 22%. But why are only 16 to 22% of adults are in full-time employment?
There's a couple of things around this one. So let's go into the technicalities of it, and then I'll kind of branch out. But because most full-time jobs are extremely draining, socially and sensory-wise, that even with reasonable adjustments, it's still going to drain an autistic person that much that they are going to have to reduce their hours for the most part. Another barrier that we have is that job interviews, for the most part, are really not the most autism-friendly process that there is. I think there's lots of factors to that. I find it weird that like full-time employment is a goal to get to. Like I think most people would be much happier with part-time employment. Yes, you don't earn as much money, but you get a percentage of your life. I'm self-employed, so I don't count as full-time employment, even though I probably work twice as many hours as someone who's full-time employed. But yeah, no, so it's a weird one. But for the most part, it is because the system isn't autism friendly. And like, yes, people aren't allowed to discriminate and stuff by going, oh, we're not allowed any autistic candidates. But on a casual level, it doesn't make, if someone sees a CV that has autistic on it, the likelihood is they're still going, okay, just chuck that to the side. And that's due to their misconceptions of what being autistic is. Like in the last few years, there's been quite a few developments in really understanding the value that neurodiverse employees can bring to a workplace. And that's good because it means that they really are being good about that. There is a problem that is happening with that where there's people going, we want neurodivergent workers, but then being shocked when they actually have to make reasonable adjustments in the workplace. And then, I've heard quite a few stories of that, of people then having to leave those jobs because they wouldn't, even though that's like specifically what they asked for. Yeah, no, so it's interesting. It just manifests itself in a much different way. Obviously, it means that income isn't as steady and as predictable, but I'm lucky that I work with companies that on a regular basis to be able to predict that to some extent. But on the whole, self-employment works for me. I don't know if it works for me because I'm autistic or if it works for me because I'm me. I think it's more the latter, but I know quite a few autistic people that are self-employed. I also know quite a few neurotypicals that are. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's autism exclusive, but I would push the side of the fact of it just gives you a bit more control over your working conditions.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that because I know with me, I've tried to look at so many jobs a few times. And with one of the jobs, one job that I managed to get a first time, I had to leave after 3 months because since I was working, like looking after teenagers in a youth group, I couldn't really settle in that environment really. But then in one job interview I tried to get like a apprenticeship in a specialist school as well as working on top as a specialist assistant. And when I told the deputy headmaster I was autistic, I didn't really get a positive response from her. And I said to her, you are discriminating me and you're breaking the law and you can be sent to court for that. And in response, she said to me, we will never employ someone like you. And that was just such the most shocking thing ever. And I know there might be people who have gone through this because a lot of people, this is from what I heard, a lot of people have said to me, people are breaking the law when it comes to discrimination for not allowing autistic people to be in full-time or part-time employment, but somehow they manage to get away with it, really, which is absolutely disgusting.
It's down to their misconceptions. They don't understand what it means to be autistic. Like a big long concept, which I'm not going to go into too much, but autism's always sat within the medical world, where it doesn't actually belong in there. It belongs in the social world. It's a difference. It's not a thing to have. It's not a thing to be with. The weirdest thing is, most of us, if we erased the word autism, it wouldn't affect how we speak. That's a hard point to explain. What I'm saying is, don't think of autism as a noun. Think of it as an adverb. It's something to describe a noun, and the noun is a person. So the fact that it's sat as to be something to have, meaning that it's something bad, because everything's always thrown into framed negatively with medical stuff. It's also, there's the misconception that autism equals more learning challenges, etc. Like, people want people who fit. People want people who are easy, but no one's easy as a human. Everyone's all over the place, quite simply. But they like to think in their head, like, no, we don't want to do anyone that we have to make some adjustments for. Like, that means that I've got to do something. That means I've got to go out my way to do something. But that, the amount of untapped potential there is horrific. But we have to look at historical figures who were most likely autistic, like Isaac Newton and Thomas Edison and people like that. And it's like, well, okay, well, if you don't want to tap into autistic potential, let's take away the electricity, let's take away internet, and see how you react to it. Because, yeah, as I say, the amount of untapped potential is just horrific.
I definitely agree. But then we're jumping on to the positive side of it, but it's a little bit of a balance in between, and that is social media. So when I first met you, because I first met you through YouTube, the first video I ever saw was you making a video called I Am Autism, which was for a competition for the National Autistic Society. And although you didn't win, it became a starting point for you to start YouTube. But what made you want to continue with YouTube in the first place following that video?
Numerous things. The reception to it, like, that can't be argued with. It went down really well, so I thought, okay, probably ought to do more of this. I kind of wanted to do YouTube as well for quite a little bit of time. I do like performing a little bit. I like presenting. I like educating people. I like presenting people with knowledge. I also like video making. Like, prior, in my teenage years and stuff, I make all sorts of videos. Like, I was watching one the other day where I was playing with Adobe After Effects when I was like 14, and it was me regenerating in, like, Doctor Who into one of my friends. Funnily enough, exactly in this spot. Anyway, but yeah, it's weird that, like, I needed that first video because that I had the pressure of time. That competition obviously had a deadline, and funnily enough, that deadline was about a week after I'd left that job, the second job that I spoke of. I'd wanted to do YouTube. I'd wanted to just make stuff and put it on the internet, but I'd not had the guts to do it. So yeah, I got a little push, and I think the first 4 or 5 videos to come after making I Am Autism weren't anything to do with autism at all. When I got back round to making autism content, seemed to do quite well. So I thought, best continue with this.
Well, it's definitely a good thing that you did, really, because I know that following that, you did a reboot of I Am Autism, inviting so many guests to do each part, me included, with the sign language. I still can't believe I did that. But it went really down well because there was a connection to autism, and through that connection you continued with it, doing all, like, various different topics, including interview people in the West End or talking about issues that really matter, like the Sunflower Lanyard, and then for World Autism Awareness Week with Mark Frober, and with the charities Next for Autism and Autism Speaks, which every time I mention or hear the name Autism Speaks, it makes me want to throw up. But it's another story for another day. But with all the issues with that, What are the continuous issues that are relating to social media and autism? And I know you have a lot to say because it's been a continuous problem, not just on any platform, so not just on YouTube, but through everywhere as well.
I can't talk about the issues without talking about the positives. So social media has allowed everyday people to get easily accessed information to real life stories from different walks of life that they wouldn't get to experience necessarily in their own life. We all live in communities, and that's not necessarily representative of the entire human race. There's so many people that have never encountered an autistic person. Well, they probably have, they probably didn't know it. But social media has made it really easy to then go and watch a vlog of someone who's a different gender, different race, different sexuality, different neurodiversity, different neurotype is what I'm trying to say, which has made for a really good empathy building thing, because it means that people are just it's being normalized and it's not being controlled through fictional media, which is often very stereotypical and stuff. No, it's allowed true stories to be surfaced. But within that, social media has provided anonymity. I can never say this word. Anonymity. Anonymity. We'll go with that. I think I've said enough sounds to resemble the word, at least in some way. Meaning that it's almost welcomed the more teasing and more of just what has happened historically in real life to people who, it's weird because of course there's so many things that people wouldn't say to your face, but they'll happily comment on a YouTube video or tweet, reply to someone or whatever. Some really horrible things sometimes. And the way, like, of course you have to remember that that person's obviously just not happy in their own life, to which you have to feel a bit sorry for them, that's how they feel they have to spend their time on the internet. But the fact that it is having a negative effect on people isn't the nicest. In terms of wider social media, I don't know, like it depends what side you get into of it, but it's social media. Like there's no beating around the bush at that part. There's lots of social norms that means there's a whole new rule set to learn. Like most of social media is text-based communication, to which it provides so much, so many issues surrounding interpretation and stuff that someone can never be 100% certain on the true meaning of something because the emotional context is often forgotten or misinterpreted. Like we had emojis and stuff, but like I see autistic people a lot like saying things bluntly, but apparently not saying things nicely enough. It happens with neurotypicals too. Text-based communication is not nice for emotive chats. Obviously with YouTube and stuff, you can add a bit more context with your visuals. TikTok, I hate the fact that you can only do a maximum of 60 seconds. No one can provide enough context in 60 seconds. And if you can, very well done to you. So yeah, I'd say the lack of context, but again, it's social media, the social rules, like especially as you get into more of like the event side of stuff and stuff, there's just the same social convention issues that exist in other social situations.
I definitely agree with that. And then I know we've got into one more question, but the last question I wanted to ask, because I know you've got a very special announcement coming at the end of the interview, which I know you really wanted to share. But before we look onto that, the last question I wanted to ask is, looking back on everything, would you ever change your life from before? Or do you think it would still be the same? So, for example, if you didn't do YouTube?
I wouldn't change any of the factors that were in my control because I've got to where I'm happy now. So, no. Obviously, there's factors beyond my control, which would have been really nice if they were different, but they were beyond my control. Yeah. So I think it's actually quite a simple answer with that. No, I wouldn't change anything. There's minor things like because I have such detailed memory, it means that like I can just be sitting there and I end up reliving some traumatic event from when I was 8 years old or whatever in full detail and stuff. But it means like I also remember some things that are potentially quite cringy, but who doesn't look at their past self and go, oh, a bit cringy. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a really good answer. And I know we've got to wrap up the interview here, but jumping into the announcement, Autism Show. For those who don't know, the Autism Show is a convention in the UK, and we have me and Connor have been well, Connor's mostly have participated in the Autism Show before, but you got something special to say about the Autism Show because you have dates.
Yes. So the Autism Show, as I started to explain there, is a convention that happens in London, Birmingham, Manchester. Normally, of course, in COVID times, we're having to do things a little bit different. An organisation that I run is called Autism Assemble. It's my it's a brand that I share with my friend Holly to be able to do stuff, and we take a hub at the Autism Show, so a stage to broadcast the autistic voices, which means that like I curate a schedule full of different voices talking about different topics. And yeah, so we're doing a webinar week. My 2 days are on the Friday and Saturday. The dates are from the 14th to the 19th of June. If you just go to autismshow.co.uk, you can have a look for tickets there. And yeah, because of course it's a virtual thing, it can internationally you can join. So yeah.
But it's always great to have like some things around the world, really. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the show as well on the 14th to the 19th of June. But yeah, it's definitely a high recommendation to do that. And that's where we're going to leave it here. Connor, thank you so much for being interviewed today. Oh, did you have?
Yeah, it was just a little bit more on the Autism Show. So able to do things slightly different for this time. Because it's an online event. Like last time I did it, I didn't have the most mental energy to think of a way to present it differently. But this time there's a few ideas that are going into it to making it just a bit more interesting than your standard webinar, let's just say. But that's a little tease.
Well, it's definitely something to look forward to, really, and I'll definitely try and get tickets. But if you ever wanted to come to the Autism Show online, please feel free to do so. I know that even though if it's going to be a little bit different, it's still going to be good anyway, no matter what. And for me, like going to the Autism Show prior to COVID, it's always been fantastic. It's a fantastic convention. So yeah, definitely a huge recommendation. And that's where we're going to leave it there. Connor, thank you so much for coming on today for the special
thank
interview.
You for having me.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. And hopefully we'll get to do more things like that soon, really, because I know that you got a lot going on in terms of like what's going on. But hopefully after COVID and once everyone's fully vaccinated and done, hopefully when things go back to normal, we just like go do a lot of things from there, I suppose. I know I'm not like actually saying things right, but yeah, it's definitely something to plan for the future as well. Hi everybody, just a quick note before I actually end the podcast with Connor right here. I had to stop a little bit of it because I was originally going to say that after Connor's interview, the schedule will be back to normal. However, something came up and I thought I would add another extra episode because there was something that really came up. And also there was a collab that I was planning to do. So I decided to combine the two together. And yeah, that's all that came of it, really. But yeah, so I am going to be leaving Connor's podcast there, and I will see you whether you are on YouTube or listening on to the podcast on Spotify and Anchor FM. I'm going to be back uploading a brand new episode on the 21st of June. And I'm so excited for this one because this is going to be a very special one. And yeah, I just really cannot believe how time's going quick, really. So you are treated to 3 new episodes in June. So we had one one with Connor and we had one with Mason. But the third one, I'm not going to say what it is yet, but I'm going to leave it as a total surprise. I hope you have the wonderful rest of the day, and I will catch you later this month for another special episode. Take care of yourselves. Bye.